It's about knowing what is important in your life, for your business, for you right now. Are you focusing on it?
Because most of the time it's like, I want more revenue and profit, but it's too simplified. You cannot work with that problem.
If you try and do these things alone, you're going to not be as powerful as if you do them in a team. Stop asking people to shout out.
And then you ask them, and suddenly you get so much value from that.
We ran training on improving meetings, and you know what happened?
The sales improved.
And I'll follow up with the 99 people who didn't buy. They're much more important than the one person who did buy.
Wow, that's really interesting and might blow some minds out there. Welcome to another episode of the Masterful.info podcast. Today we have guest Faris Aranki. He is an expert of IQ, EQ, and FQ, and he will explain you what it means and how it can help you with your business and everyday life. Faris, welcome. It's so nice to have you here.
Wilhelm, thank you for inviting me. Thanks for having me on today. I'm really excited by the talk we're going to have.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you. Could you please explain what it means and the importance for entrepreneurs specifically?
Yeah, I will. And I'll just give people some context, which is I run my own business. It's a consulting firm where we help companies with their IQ, EQ, and FQ. And the reason I do this is I used to be a strategy consultant. Mm-hmm. Okay. I used to be the guy you would pay to come in and write a strategy for you. And so that's a lot of IQ. But what I realized is if you don't have these other two components, those strategies are not going anywhere. Right. So, the IQ is the great idea. The EQ is the ability to take others on the journey with you around that great idea. Okay. Because if you can't get other people excited by it, get them to understand it, it's just a piece of paper. And then the FQ is the focus quotient, the ability to focus on that great idea to make sure you deliver it. Okay. And you need all three components to make anything happen in life. Okay. It's not enough to have the great idea. It's not enough to have everyone bought in, right? It's not enough to just be super focused. You need all three to be really successful. And that's why we go into companies and help them with their IQ, EQ, and FQ.
Some of our listeners might not know what EQ is. It stands for emotional quotient.
It does. Yeah. So EQ, emotional quotient, many people might have heard of it as emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
If you think about the people you know who get on the best with everyone, those are people who've got high EQ. The people who everyone's face lights up when they walk into a room, the people who know the right things to say at the right times, the people who are in control of their own emotions, respond when other people have emotions, can see when someone's sad, someone's happy. Those are people with good EQ. It is a growing, common known sort of terminology, but it basically explains those kind of people.
Yes. And what about the FQ? That's even less common.
Yeah, it is so uncommon. Actually, when I started researching this, I discovered there wasn't anything called FQ. So actually, I trademarked and patented it.
Wow.
But it's just explaining that ability to focus. And I'm not just talking about, can you not look at your phone for 10 minutes? It's about knowing what is important in your life, for your business, for you right now. Are you focusing on it? Are you clearing the path to make sure you are giving your best for it? And what we see in so many companies is that they are too stretched. They have 100 initiatives going on, right? So no wonder they're delivering each mediocre, right? And it's confusing for their staff members. Like, should I be working on project A or project B or project C? The number one thing for focus is prioritization.
Yes, absolutely.
Is sitting down and saying, no, these are the 3 things. These are the 5 things that above all else must be achieved.
What is the advantage of understanding and utilizing your formula? How will it or might it change the business of and the life of our listeners?
Many companies are not, and many people aren't thinking about all 3 dimensions. They over-index on one. I've worked in a lot of companies where they tell me, don't worry, we've got the best idea. We've got amazing people, right? And think about very technical companies.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of different companies, and one of my clients is a startup, and the founder is an engineer. He has got super high IQ. He loves building stuff. His perfect day is being in a room just building stuff.
Yeah.
He's very good at it. So high IQ. He built an amazing product. But what he's not good at is communicating to others. And by the time I worked with him, he had 60 employees.
Wow.
And they needed to know which direction. There was some big decisions in the company. Should they do option A? Should they expand into a new country, or should they build a new product? They didn't have the bandwidth to do both with the team they had. But because he was just stuck in a room building, they weren't getting any direction from him. So he was lacking that EQ bit. And his natural instinct was to just keep building, right? Keep building. So he, work on the product. So where we helped was to sort of fill in the missing gaps around his EQ, get him talking to his team, get him understanding their point of view, so that they could all agree, this is what we need to do. And that gave them much greater FQ, much greater focus. Because in the meantime, while he was not communicating, people were just doing their own thing. They were filling in the gaps with, I think we should do this, and I think we should do that. That's a classic example where over-indexing in one area and not having enough of the others can just lead to chaos. And that's exactly what was happening. The company were not going anywhere, and worse, they were building up costs and that sort of thing. Whereas they had a really successful product, they just needed everyone to be bought in and more focus.
What happened after he implemented this idea?
So we worked together with the senior management team. We got them all aligned around what they should do. We got a very clear sort of 3-year strategy around that. That wasn't my strategy. It was their strategy that they all passionate about. So they walked out, told the staff, and it led to a dramatic increase in their profits, in their direction. Right? And they had a bunch of investors, and they were a lot happier with the direction of the company afterwards. They are now a year and a half into the rolling out that strategy. It has been a massive success, right? It's been the underpinning of a big uplift in the acceleration of their profitability, almost doubling. And it's been a real pleasure to just that simple sort of bringing people together, getting more focus at the outset has been the sort of foundations for that.
Wow, that's amazing. Are some people better in one of those areas? Is it like learned, or is it what we are born with? And how much room for improvement does everyone have?
So the good news is everyone can improve in all those dimensions. Okay. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about Mensa IQ. I can't help, we don't go in and work with those sort of things. We're talking about strategic IQ and strategic emotional intelligence and strategic focus. All right. All of them can be improved. That's why we run training for clients. I teach people techniques to improve in all those dimensions. But the other thing is, if you try and do these things alone, you're going to not be as powerful as if you do them in a team. Because in a team, you'll have someone who has much higher IQ than somebody else, but somebody else has higher EQ. And together, it's like a giant sort of superhero. You're putting together all the powers to get the best out of the team. But to do that, you need to make sure the team are working well, right? Because often what we see in teams is, if it's a team of 10 people, maybe one person is coming up with the ideas, and everyone, and usually it's the boss. But that doesn't mean it's the best ideas.
Yes.
Right. And often people are marginalized or left with. So you need to use the full talents of your team and get the best out of them.
How do you do that as a manager, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner?
Lots of different techniques. But number one is turn it around, be inclusive, pull people in, ask for everyone's opinion rather than just the same 2 people. But you've got to be aware of your biases if you're the manager or the leader. Yeah. Who do you keep going back to? Why do you keep going back to them? Why are you not asking person X? When was the last time you asked them for their view? And then there are simple process techniques. Stop asking people to shout out. I long ago switched all the teams that I work with. Instead of, if I put up a topic, I don't say, I don't want you to shout out. Because what happens there is the extroverts shout out. And they dominate the conversation. Instead, I'll say, I want everybody to write down an answer or their thoughts on this topic. And then you're all going to submit them anonymously. So we take names off them, and then we judge what is the best opinion, right? So that way, A, you're getting all the input. B, you're not sort of associating it with, it's Wilhelm's idea. I like Wilhelm. Therefore, I'm going to support his idea. No, I like the idea. That's the best idea. Okay, whose is it? Oh, it's yours. Okay, right? It doesn't matter. So what you want to do is increase the input and take away any biases. So simple things like that, as well as being super inclusive as a leader, using inclusive language, using positive language to reinforce. Because another thing we see a lot of is people share an idea and the boss or the leader says something like, well, that's not a good idea. That won't work. What happens then? It means the next time that person is less likely to give an idea. So being positive, accepting ideas in the early days is a big part of it as well.
That's strong. Yeah. Because I seen it over and over again that certain people in teams, they are so loud, they are so active, and it's not necessarily the best ideas. And they are quiet people. They are sitting the whole day. They are sitting in the room and they are too shy to tell their point of view. And then you ask them and suddenly you get so much value from that. And with written form, it's so much easier. And especially with anonymous, that can make a huge difference. You can evaluate every idea equally, no matter of how outgoing the person is.
Definitely.
If a client comes to you, like imagine it's a small business owner, he has maybe 2-3 employees. How would the process look like? What would be the steps?
We always start with what's the problem you're trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what specifically are you trying to solve? And we spend a lot of time there because often people don't know what their problem is.
Oh.
They only know, they can see we're not hitting our sales.
Exactly.
But what is the problem? Why are you not hitting it? So really spending time to sharpen the problem, be really clear, what are we trying to solve is the other thing. And I often tell people there's a great quote by Albert Einstein that I use a lot, which is he once said, if I only had an hour to solve a problem that my life depended on, I'd spend at least 55 minutes working out what the problem is because then it's
Yes.
But too many people spend 55 minutes just doing stuff, out of panic. So step number 1, working with the client, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Step number 2 is, okay, is it an IQ problem we need to solve, an EQ problem, an FQ problem? Yeah, what are these things that are holding you back? It's then about generating as many options on how we can overcome that. And that could be getting those ideas out of a team. That's often how we help with the IQ side of things. We will get more ideas out of a team. We will stress test those ideas rather than just picking the first one. So that's how we often help with the IQ. And it involves being really clear on what the problem is, helping tease out those ideas, working with the team. And the second part is then, okay, how do we communicate this? How do we get people excited in this? Now, we might coach you in how to do that, or we might shape those messages for you, or we might stand in the middle and be the person who translates. That's a lot of value that we can add to teams and how we often help clients. And then the last part is around that focus. How we help clients there is we run things like pre-mortems. We are trying to anticipate what could be in the way of your success here. And we want to remove those things before they even happen. And like I said before, one of the biggest things we can do is prioritization. If they have 100 projects they're working on, we help them get that down to 20. If they have 50, we help them get that down to 10 and so on, because the more focused you can be, the better you'll be at delivering whatever your goal is.
Yes. So let's start with step 1. Are there certain techniques to find out the problem? Because most of the time it's like, I want more revenue and profit, but it's too simplified. You cannot work with that problem.
Yeah. And this is where being a bit like a child, I don't know if you have any children, Wilhelm.
No.
If you've ever met any children, they ask lots of questions. They keep asking why. Right. So there's a lot is just being like that, right? Asking why a lot. Why is this happening? What is happening before this? So really trying to get to the bottom of things. The second is where problem definition can be enhanced is getting more people's views on the problem. Because again, you might not know what you don't know. And if you're a leader, you're not seeing some of the things that are happening on the ground. So involve your team. So just the other day, I was running one of these sessions for a team. And it was amazing. We had 20 different views on what the problem was.
Wow.
And so it's about having that debate. And then, so get the ideas out. You might then have to go away and find a bit of data to back some of these things out. Don't just do it on gut. You think that's the problem. Can you substantiate it? So really probing either through asking why a lot or asking more people their opinion and then getting some data to back it up is the best way to unpack a problem. Really understand what's happening, why it's happening. And it's amazing how many times you start with, we just want to increase sales. And then we realize that actually a problem. Actually, let me tell you a story. I was a commercial director for a company that needed to double its sales quite urgently. Mm-hmm. And so I was brought in, and after a week, my boss pulled me into a room and she said, I need your answers now. How do we solve this problem? And I said, look, I don't know the full answer, but I'm going to tell you immediately what we need to do. He said, what's that? I said, we need to teach everyone in this company how to run a meeting. She said to me, what's that got to do with sales? And I said, well, have you ever been to a meeting here? They're all very disorganized. People turn up late. They don't make any notes. They overrun. people, I said, they're very badly structured. I said, at best, they're just a waste of time. At worst, they're creating confusion amongst people.
Wow.
So we need to teach people how to run to time, have clear objectives, have key takeaways. And she said, okay, I agree with your points. I'm not sure it'll impact the sales, but I'll allow you sort of 2 weeks to teach everyone in this company how to improve their meetings. So I did. We ran training on improving meetings. And you know what happened?
The sales improved.
Sales improved by 1.5% as a result.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. And now I'm not saying that was the main problem underneath, but I'm saying it was one of those things that I saw the flow of this problem is impacting her overall problem. So let's fix that. And often that's the thing when you unpack problems. There are a series of little smaller problems that you need to solve to get to the bigger problem. Everyone thinks it's going to be one magic solution. It very rarely is.
Yeah, I've been to companies, to startups where I really hated to be on the meetings because they are so long and so fruitless, kind of. Especially if the owner or the business owner is speaking for an hour without letting anyone else to speak. It's not only wasting of time, but it's also reducing my motivation because it's like the energy, it's draining the energy.
Yeah.
And you can also ask if you are searching for different opinions within the company. The team is a good starting point. And also probably the clients and maybe even like for smaller startups, even potential prospects, why they are not buying more or why they are not interacting. Are there any other parties who you could ask, especially like for smaller startups who don't have a big team?
Yeah. I mean, so ask the team, ask your customers, ask your competitors, right? But
wow.
Some of that is moving into getting ideas, right?
Yeah.
Really being clear on your problem. You should have enough sight amongst your team, right? If they're not aware of what their problem is,
you need another team, maybe.
Well, I mean, there are other questions to be asked, but yeah, certainly in the early days, if you're a solo founder and you're like, why is nobody buying my product? Then you need to go and ask not just your customers, but the people who, what we call almost customers, why they weren't buying, right? Because your customers have actually bought the product, so they can only give you one insight. And a lot of people forget about that. Now, I'm a very analytical person. I do a lot of stuff and I try, test and learn. So I will do 100 of something and then I'll go back and review those 100 things. What worked, what didn't work. And sometimes I'll have 100 conversations trying to sell something and I'll follow up with the 99 people who didn't buy. They're much more important than the one person who did buy.
Wow, that's an important lesson. Yeah, we focus so much on our current clients and we forget those are the exceptions who were not scared by the problem.
Exactly.
Are there common problems that you encounter in the first step? Like companies have similar problems over and over.
It's really because we're called into a range of things, right? Sales problems, team employee engagement problems, warehousing problems, stock problems. So it really depends on the industry. It really depends.
Yeah.
But at the core of it, a lot of the problems are how people are working together. Yeah. Miscommunication, lack of trust. These often flow throughout all these things, or misunderstanding. That's, we often work on those as much as the actual getting more products out the door.
Is it also oftentimes because people and companies focusing too much on IQ and not on the other two parts?
Often it is, so we've been working with a trading team to improve their trading decisions. Now, obviously, they need IQ. They need knowledge of the market, knowledge of what's going on. And that's not what we help them with. We helped them a little bit with the IQ, which was the sharing the knowledge amongst the team.
Yes.
What they were really bad was the EQ part. They didn't trust each other because they saw each other as competitors. Like, if I give him my knowledge, he'll do a better trade than me and he'll get a bigger bonus. So they kept their knowledge to themselves, which meant that the collective knowledge of the team was lower. They weren't sharing ideas. So we had to get them to trust each other and work better together, which unlocked even a higher IQ. And so we had lots of different techniques to do that, to get them to see each other as friends, not competitors, to build up more trust quickly. And as a result, the team made 6% more profits.
Wow.
And our main focus was on getting them working better together as a team rather than improving their technical skills or their knowledge levels.
Could you give a few examples how you can make a team work better together?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. There's so many free, simple ways to get the people working. All right. There was this great experiment called randomized taxi selection, where in a company, they randomly allocated people after a company away day to share a taxi together back to train station. Except it wasn't random. They allocated people. And the reason being is they wanted to monitor how good the relationships were of the people who had met in that taxi afterwards, how much they improved working together. So they picked four people from different departments who didn't know each other. And they said, you have to share a taxi. And what they discovered is 6 months later, those four people were working way better after that random taxi than before the taxi. And it's anything. You put human beings together, they find something in common, they will work better together. So often, just get people to have coffees with someone they don't know in a company. Get people to go and see the other person doing their job. Get people to share personal things about their life. I've got kids. I've got a dog. Simple, stupid stuff makes us trust each other more. Therefore, we will be more collaborative, more creative. It doesn't need rocket science. But we often forget this. And because we're so busy, we rush from meeting to meeting. We don't stop to say, how are you? Tell me a bit more about you. Right? Or we find it awkward starting a conversation with a stranger. That's why having a random taxi makes us talk, but you can be the random taxi yourself. It's often stuff like that we do for company.
Wow, that sounds so simple, but I understand. Yeah, usually in a company, you have so much pressure. You have, especially in startups and bigger corporations, it's a bit maybe different, but in startups, yeah, you want to profit and then you have a meeting and you try to make the best out of it. But there is also the social component. And that's kind of like the glue of the teams. If you don't just see the human as a machine, as a something that just here to work, but also with life behind that, and then it's everything improves. I guess the communication improves, the trust improves, and the results in the end improve. Nowadays, many startups have remote teams. That's a next level challenge. Do you have some tips for that? How to improve the team?
100%, 100%. So in terms of the team and how they're working, set up more channels so they can spend time together. So one of the things we do a lot with companies is what I call a virtual library. I stole this idea from the US during COVID. So in universities in the US, they found students' grades were going down during COVID. And a lot of the problem is many students pre-COVID would go to the library to study just because other students were studying. And that social pressure would make them study. When they didn't see other students studying, they stopped studying. So they came up with this idea of opening a giant Zoom and having 400, 500, 600 students on it, all studying.
Wow.
And you know what happened? The people studied more, but also they became more social. They'd see a friend and they'd say, let's meet for a coffee in a breakout room, in a Zoom room. So I now do this with companies. I say, okay, pick a day maybe it's Friday every 2 weeks. For 2 hours, you're all just going to work with your cameras on. Right? It's not a meeting. It's not a conversation. But you know what? That builds up trust and knowledge. And people can jump out and have a coffee in a Zoom. So there are lots of little things. You can start a Slack channel or a WhatsApp channel to share non-work stuff. Yeah. Each week, pick a topic. What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite food? Share a photo of the funniest thing that's happened to you this week. Little ways to create connections and bonds that get forgotten, but they're silly, simple. Right? Yeah. I tell every boss, finish each virtual meeting 5 minutes early and ring the most junior person. Because in the real world, if you were all together, after a meeting, that junior person would ask, maybe coming out the meeting would have questions for you. Oh, I didn't understand this. When you did that, why did you do that? Right? And in a virtual world, that all gets missed because you're not walking out the room with them anymore. So why don't you just ring them and say to them, you've got 5 minutes. Is there any questions that, this is time for you? And that creates great trust with that junior person, gives them a chance to ask all those questions and increase their development. So doing little things like that. And that's what I'm talking about, being an inclusive boss. There's lots of techniques in the virtual world you can use that we just forget about or are too lazy to do.
Yes, I can imagine it can be pretty scary for the junior to talk openly with what he or she didn't understand in front of the whole team. So there is another component to not dismiss weakness and not to criticize if someone didn't understand. So it goes hand in hand together, I guess.
Goes hand in hand. It's about creating that safe space. Yeah.
Yes, safe space.
So something I tell every leader is have office hours, right? In a virtual world, have office hours in the non-virtual, right? And what this is, so in the virtual world, we do this a lot, is tell your team every Monday from this time to this time, I'm going to be on a Zoom call. And if you want to drop in for anything, I'll be there. And I said to the leader, do you know what? The same thing will happen. The first 2 or 3 weeks, nobody will turn up. Okay. Because people don't believe you. They don't believe you will sit on a Zoom call for 2 hours. And I said, but don't give up, because by week 3 or 4, the most confident person in the team will turn up just to check you're doing it. And then they'll say, and then by week 4 or 5, word will have spread that actually, no, the boss does do this, and people will actually start turning up if they want to talk to you. But it's about, you need those 3 or 4 weeks to create the safe space and people that trust that this is what you're going to do.
Yes. So we identified the problem. We already mentioned several solutions. Is there anything else you can talk about the step 2?
Yeah. Step 2, the big thing in step 2, there's 2 big things. One is improve your listening. Okay. Too many of us don't listen well. We spend too much time thinking about what we're going to say or just talking. You'll be a much better leader, much better human being if you spend more time listening. People find that hard, but you can train it in yourself. And then the second thing is be more flexible in your communication style. Too many people, when it comes to EQ, talk in one way. Yeah. If I'm a very logical person, I talk to you in logic, right? You need to do this for reason A, B, C. But some people don't like logic. So if you want to be a powerful communicator, you need to be able to find a second or third or fourth way to explain the same idea without logic. Okay. So we teach a lot of leaders how to flex across 4 different communication styles to be the most emotionally intelligent and successful leader. And there's no reason everyone can't do that.
Could you shortly explain those 4 communication styles?
Yes. One is logic. One is directive, just telling people what to do. One is bridging. So it's you turn it around and you ask people, what do they think? You build a relationship with them. Yeah. So it's not about your opinion. It's about their opinion. It's about, the relationship between the two of you. And the fourth one is visioning or storytelling. Create an amazing image, tell an amazing story. That's why they want to be involved in it.
Do you prefer one of those or 2 of those, or do you see them equally strong?
We all have a dominant style. Yeah. So me personally, I'm a storyteller and I'm a bridger. I used to be a very logical person because I'm a mathematician. But here's the thing, to be super successful, you need all 4.
Oh.
But most of us only have 1, maximum 2 in our pocket. But you'll always meet someone, or the context will change. So like you can be a super scientific person who uses logic all the time, and you could be surrounded by scientists. But if you're in a burning building and it's on fire, you don't want to be using logic to convince people to leave the burning building, right? You just want to be directive and get the hell out of this building, right? So even you can have one style and be surrounded by the same people every day. You still need to learn the other styles because contexts change.
So it depends on the context, but also probably with whom you are talking with. Yeah. If it's a logical person, you can talk a bit more logical. And if it's a logical topic, logical context, even like most logical, maybe probably Einstein or someone like that, in his private environment, he was probably also a little bit silly and
of course. And
not just logical.
And if you're Einstein surrounded by other physicists like Hawking's, you don't need logic. Sometimes they go, do you know what? We know you're Einstein. Just tell us what to do. Yeah. So actually we're happy. Yeah. We're happy with a different style because we already know you're very logical. So actually, and a lot of logical people make this mistake. When they're seen as the expert, they don't need to use logic. They just have to tell people what to do. So even then, don't assume just because I'm surrounded by logical people and I'm logical, I need to use logic.
Interesting. So there is also this component of trying to be perceived as intelligent, and then you are trying to communicate logically, but it's not always needed because even like if as a boss, you don't need to prove yourself all the time.
Exactly. Just think how many times you've been in a meeting with someone. You're like, just tell me what to do. I don't need 20 minutes. Just give me in 1 minute what you need me to do and I'll do it.
Amazing. So, and what about the next step?
Into the FQ, the next step, how can people improve their FQ? First of all, try and limit the amount of things you're doing. It can be super hard, right? Because we all like doing stuff. We all like being busy. But it's better to be busy, focused on less things than busy, focused across a wide spectrum of things. Unless that's your goal, of course. But yeah, so remove more stuff in your life, remove more distractions is a big component. Human beings are great at adding stuff, not great at subtracting. And know yourself is a key component of focus. If you know you get distracted by something, remove that thing, right? But you have to appreciate that you get distracted by it, right? So if you know you can't help but look at your mobile phone all the time, remove the mobile phone from the room when you're working. If you know you're the kind of person that will always eat a pack of cookies when they're on the table, make sure the cookies are never there. So some of it is being smart. And I tell people to really think this through, right? Some of the biggest distractors in our life we're not even aware of. Things like when we're hungry or if we're cold or hot, right? Say you're in a room and the room is too cold. You're not going to focus on your work. Your brain is going to be like, I'm too cold, thinking too much. So just eliminate those things as soon as you feel them, right? Turn the temperature in your room, get a jumper, open a window. If you're hungry, just go and eat, right? Because otherwise you'll spend the next hour only sort of 50% focused on your task. So there's lots of things. Now, when I work with teams, I do this to the nth degree. Like, I don't want two people sitting next to each other who hate each other, because then for the whole meeting, they're going to be just thinking about the person. So I am thinking about the layout of the room, the temperature of the room, what time the meeting is at during the day, what order the agenda is. So how much focus, because human beings run out of energy. So don't put things later on in the day or later on in the agenda, because they're not going to give it their best debate or their best focus. So simple things like that can increase focus and effectiveness.
So as a boss, as a manager, so there is probably no overall rule. For example, a big office is bad or good. Distraction with music, for example, people listening to music and so on. So it's probably a lot of things are individual. You have to communicate with your team and ask how they prefer it.
Yes, a lot of it is. But the macro things are be really clear on what people should be working on, right? Don't leave it to interpretation. How they do their work, those, should you have music, should you not? Those are much smaller level of detail. But even to the point of, if you're running a meeting, be really clear what the meeting's about. So many times I see people try and do too much with a meeting. Okay, we're going to reach agreement, we're going to generate new ideas, and we're going to do some team bonding. I'm like, those are three different things. Have three different meetings. Because you need to stand up and say, this meeting is just about this. Therefore, I only need these people in the room. If we found ourselves doing other things, then we are not addressing our meeting. We need to stop and go back. You should be that focused and that ruthless, and that gets better results out of a team. And you find you can do things quicker and to a better level of output.
Yes. I think the problem oftentimes I see in companies that employees are kind of judged on how much effort they put in. For example, if someone is coming early and going late, then it looks like he is really motivated. He is ready for promotion. But what has he achieved during this 10 hours, 12 hours? That's a bit more probably difficult to estimate. So for managers, it's a bit like challenging to change the focus from number of hours to output.
Yeah. And there's a time and a place in a business to measure inputs and a time and a place to measure outputs. And often we forget to make that switch and we put too much. And particularly when there's lack of trust, we measure or there's a lag, which comes back to a lack of trust. Is I can only measure the inputs right now. The results won't happen for 2 weeks. So I'm going to judge you on the inputs. And that's why that EQ, the building up the trust, the safe zone is very important.
Do you have a couple of more ideas for how to build this trust in the company?
Yeah, I mean, trust comes about, as I say, through honest conversations. A big one is have the team agree a set of rules of how they're going to work together. Don't force that on the team. So get the team together during a kickoff and say, okay, how do we all like to work? Who's a morning person? Who's an evening person? Find out what are some of the things going on in people's lives. And usually with teams, when I run a team, I say, okay, everybody, so we'll agree a set of rules that we all need to be online from this time to this time. We won't have meetings at this time. But then I say to everyone, you're all allowed one thing that the team will protect for you. And that could be, I need to pick up my kids every Wednesday from school, or I have a yoga class every Monday that I want to go to. And it's not for us to judge what your one thing is. Right? You might say, I just, every Tuesday I want to watch Netflix. Okay, that's your one thing, right? It's not for me to say Netflix, that's a waste of time. But that builds trust, right? Everyone knows they get one thing. They know it's protected by the team. We're all aware of what you're doing and we can support it. And so it's about forming those contracts between a team of how we're going to work together. What are our expectations of each other? That's a big thing that helps build trust.
Yeah, I can imagine that feeling empowered by employees and partners, and you don't just feel like you are executing for someone else, but okay, you created this rule, so you want to follow it. So I can imagine it's very effective and also very motivating. You feel like you have a saying.
Yeah. So other things that motivate teams are recognition. Right. So make sure to recognize and reward people, call out their good work, build the community between them, make sure that it's really clear what they're working on, give them autonomy. So don't micromanage them, sit on their shoulder. And some of these feed into each other. When you have more trust, then you need less looking over their shoulder. Give them incentives, stuff to strive for, goals, show them how they can develop a career working with you rather than just finish the task. All these little things, often forgotten, but all go towards building trust and motivation.
So it's probably not only about financial incentives, like, okay, you will get more salary, you will increase and stuff. So it's just a small part. There are much more important things. No?
It's a small part, yeah. I often talk about the 9 motivators for teams, and cash is just one of them. Career, control, community, cause, communication. These are all just as important.
Wow, that's really interesting and might blow some minds out there. Yeah, it was really valuable advice. I think our audience can now improve their productivity and getting closer to the success. Some of our audience might be interested to dive even deeper with you, with consultancy and maybe execution. So what could you recommend them?
Well, I would love to continue diving deeper with them as well. So I recommend 2 things. Number one, come and visit our company website, which is www.sheerghetto.com. Okay, I'm sure we'll put the spelling in the notes. And for those who are interested, Sheerghetto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone, because we help sharpen you just like a sharpening stone sharpens a knife. Or the other place is come and find me, Faris Aranki, on LinkedIn. I spend probably a bit too much time on LinkedIn, but I love it. I reply to every message and I post little tips every day and share my journey. I publish a weekly blog where you'll get some ideas on how you can improve each of these dimensions. But yeah, come and find me there. We'll keep on chatting.
Thank you so much, Faris. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Wilhelm. Thanks for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it as well.
Great. Bye-bye, guys.